everyone. Welcome to the localization and language customization using Azure Active Directory B2C video. My name is Edward, and I'm going to be joined by Vinu. We're both program managers on the B2C engineering team. And today we're going to walk you through the aspects of how you actually localize and customize the language for your end users. So there's three main capabilities we'll review today. First of all, the out-of-the-box support. What I mean by that is when you actually get B2C, you can create all your user flows um, out of the administration console. And from there, you'll see very quickly how you can already get support for 36 languages out of the box. We will talk about how you can actually customize those languages. So in other words, you'll see some values and strings that we have defaulted to in English and all the other languages. But if you don't like the way we presented that, or you wanted to give a little bit more verbose values, then we're going to show you how you can edit those default strings. And the string overrides are very, very simple to do with the user flows. We will also talk a little bit more detail about using entirely your own custom HTML and CSS to customize the page if you want to go beyond just the strings. So maybe there's things you want to place differently on the page or something additional that we don't offer. So it's maybe, let's say, a terms of use. Just briefly talk about how those become available to you.
Thank you, Ed. Hi, my name is Vinu, and I'm going to be walking you through the theory behind custom branding and localization in user flows. Before we dive into how to localize your end user experiences, let's take a look at how custom branding works. As custom branding and localization are very much connected. Many times you might want to have a different custom experience for a different language. When a user goes into a B2C login screen, all the experiences are defined in the B2C policy is merged with the custom HTML or CSS to get that fully branded experience. Now let's take a look at how this works step by step. When a user goes to the login page, B2C runs some JavaScript that first pulls in the policy. The first property that's pulled from the policy is the claims or the attributes you want to collect from the users. For example, attributes like city, date of birth are pulled from your user flow. Now this is how claims are defined in a custom policy. Now you can see the claims, sign-in name and password defined in the custom policy. If you have JavaScript enabled, you would have configured a page layout version, and that version is then pulled from the policy and merged on the client side. Now this is how you would define a page contract version on a custom policy. So after that, language customization kicks in. The claims and the page contract are now merged with the language that's configured. The language setting can come in from your policy, a query string, or a language preference of the client in the browser. And this is the language setting in a custom policy file, which specifically is defined for both English and Spanish. Now, without any custom HTML or CSS, this is how the end user experience will look like. But the last piece of this puzzle is the custom content from the customer stored in a CDN or a blob storage that B2C finally fetches. A link to the custom page is fed into the policy like this in a user flow. And similarly, it's fed into the custom policy as highlighted. Now finally, after all the properties are merged on the client side, the end user sees this fully branded custom experience. Okay, now let's take a look at how you can configure your custom experiences and your language settings in a B2C policy, specifically in a user flow. Now I've already created a user flow here. It's called the B2C sign up sign in user flow, which is a combined sign up sign in experience. Now on the left you can see there's something called the page layouts. Now under page layouts, you have something called the templates, which is basically the default out of the box experience. There's a couple of options that you can pick from. For example, I have picked the ocean blue template, and when I pick that template and do a run user flow, now you can see how that experience will look like in a combined sign up sign in flow. So this is the default ocean blue experience. Now you can also have a localized experience here. Now the experience that we saw was just in English. For example, you can have 36 different languages that B2C supports out of the box. So I have enabled the language customization here, and you can see that I've enabled for English and French and a number of other languages. Now if you want to see how the localized experience would look like, so just hit run user flow again. But now you can pick a specific UI locale. So when you click this UI locale, all it does is it appends a query string, a UI locale query string to your login endpoint. So now I'm going to maybe pick French, and then let me run this user flow again. Now you can see that all of this text that comes from B2C is completely localized to French. Now you've seen the experiences in the out of the box default templates, but now if you want to have your own logo, or have your custom HTMLs and CSS, let's see how you can go about that. So one easy configuration that you can do to embed your custom logo is using this feature called custom company branding. So in company branding, you can have different languages, and for each of those different languages, you can have a particular logo. So in my case, I have already defined the logos for French. So you can see I have certain logos and backdrop colors that I have already defined for French. So if I go back and look at my French login experience, you can see that there is my logo out there. But then if you go to this English experience, that logo is not present because I have not defined the logo for the English experience. So that is one quick and easy way for you to customize your login experiences. But if you want to have a fully customized experience, that is, you can also bring in your HTMLs and CSS. Let's see how you can go about and do that. So let me go back to my user flow. And in this user flow, you go back to your page layouts, and you see this page wherein you can also bring in your own customized page content. So you basically enable that to yes. And instead of this experience, I already have a custom HTML with some CSS and JavaScript enabled. So this is my HTML, and you can also see I also have some scripts enabled, and I also have some CSS enabled here. So I'm just going to pick that HTML file and override this default HTML with my custom HTML. So let me save that. And now when I run this user flow, you can see that fully customized end-to-end experience. And one more thing that you might have to be cautious about is that any text coming from this HTML will not be localized. Say for example, I have this create a new account. This particular text is coming from my HTML itself. So that is not going to be localized even if you send a UI locale call of French. So you might want to be cautious of that and use different HTMLs if you have text for different languages. Because you can also bring in your CSS, like Ed mentioned earlier, we do not support right to left languages, but bringing in your CSS, you can achieve that right to left languages. So lastly, I want to also talk about string overrides. Now you see all these different strings that B2C provides, like email address, password, sign up now, etc. Now what if you want to override any of these strings with your own content? So the way that you would do that is go to language again, and then pick the language that you are interested in. And here you can see all the different experiences that that's supported by B2C. But I am particularly interested in the unified sign up sign in flow. So you can download the defaults, and you can override the strings in those defaults with your own content. So let me download the default language. Okay, now this is the default JSON that I just downloaded. So instead of sign up now, I am going to, if I want to change this string to register now, all I have to do is first, make sure that the override element is set to true. And after that, change this value from sign up now to register now. So let me save this file and upload this file onto the portal. So I am now uploading this file onto the portal. Okay, now that I've uploaded the file, let me see how that experience would look like. But before I show you the experience, I want to go back and show you that the default out of the box experience is sign up now, and I have overridden that with register now. So let's check if that's worked. I'm running the user flow again, and now you can see that instead of sign up now, you have register now. So you can follow this method and override literally everything that you see on the screen, including help text messages. As we saw in the demo, there are a few ways of setting the language preference in B2C. But the order of precedence of the displayed language during runtime is first the UI locale, the language setting in the query string parameter of the B2C login endpoint. Next would be the preferred browser language of the client, and finally the default language setting in the B2C policy.
So as you saw from Vino's presentation and demos, how to do the customization through our administration portal and all the tools available there. Many of you will probably want to explore using custom policies if you haven't. This gives you a little bit more control in terms of the actual user flows that the out-of-the-box user flows and user journeys don't offer the customization that you are looking for. So for a very simple example, maybe during the actual user flow, you want to actually collect additional information from the user and may have to interface to external systems. Or there's some very advanced configurations of the user flow that you want to control. So in all those cases, we have the ability to customize those flows through our custom policies. That means instead of the admin interface, you'll actually be configuring and manipulating the XML files to describe step 1, step 2, step 3. And in that user flow control, you can also do customization there, of course, of the languages. So just for reference, here is some of our documentation about how the language customization works, and also the fact that we support the same languages that were mentioned previously, as well as your own customer languages. You can actually override the strings directly through our custom policies. And here in our documentation, we have all the default ones. Shown here is English, and down below is Spanish, just as an example. And here is where you would come in to actually manipulate and override these values. So as a simple example, if you didn't like calling the logon identifier email, you could, or email address, which is the default, you can come in here and say something different, or maybe you'd want to hyphenate email or add some additional text. And then likewise, you could do that for every language that you supported. And the previous one was sign in. There's one for sign up. There's also one for profile edit, password reset, etc. and then you would describe what the contents, how you reference them within the policy, and then you could actually run and execute those in your languages. Um, as probably mentioned, we don't support the right to left languages, but you could use custom CSS for that capability. And then you could then support those additional languages. Here are the languages again for reference that we support out of the box. And let me quickly go over here to the tool that we use for editing custom policies. It's called Visual Studio Code. You can actually download this. It's very lightweight. And Visual Studio Code combined with the B2C extension add-on allows you to do the work within the custom policies in a very self-controlled and easy manner. And you'll also see there's an additional capability in here when you manipulate these custom policies through our tool, is that you can actually find references much more quickly. So previously I showed you the documentation. Well, here's the actual, within my policy, the actual things that I've presented here for localization. Now you see that I put a crosshatch in front of, or a hashtag in front of some of these text strings. Normally you would not ever do that. Um, the only purpose of doing this, you'll see in a moment, is for demonstration purposes. Normally it would just be something like this, email address, without the hashtag. But I'll show you why I did this in a second. It's for demonstration purposes. But here's a sign up and sign in that references those values. And what I was mentioning is within the policy, sometimes you want to see what this actually is all about. And if you put your mouse cursor above it, it'll actually take you and show you where this is referenced. And then if you wanted to actually go to that piece of code, you could very quickly just find it. And then when you click on it, it'll take you to that section. So going back to here, the admin portal, real quick, I have the localization policies already uploaded within my Azure portal. And I wanted to show you just quickly how quickly it is you can test the string changes. So when I click the Run Now experience, I'm in English right now, but you see that the hashtags or cross hatches are showing up in these, and that's just purposely for the demonstration to show you that I edited these, and these are indeed the ones that are showing up in the real life experience. Of course, I can remove everything, upload this policy file, and rerun it, and these would disappear. So that's just a quick showing of how that could be implemented in through the custom policies. As well as the languages, you can also reference your own HTML pages, which can contain, will also be combined with your own CSS and potentially your own JavaScript as well. So for really full-on customization, you can also include customized JavaScript to manipulate how the UX looks like as well. So some additional best practices about localization. If you do use your own HTML, then make sure that, of course, you have the localized versions as well, matching. We mentioned using the CSS style sheets for the right to left languages. Where possible, you always use the string overrides, whether it's in the user flows or in the custom policies. Your next best alternative would be doing something with JavaScript to override strings, but where possible, use the string overrides within our policies and in our templates. That way you have better control of versioning these things and can manage those. And if you outsource localization, it's very easy. You just send those files to the localization partner that's going to do that, and they send you back the results. That way you don't have to do anything within the code itself. Audit logs, I mentioned briefly that these typically are administrative actions, all administrative actions, including updating policies, updating language file packs, overriding the string files, strings for the localization or audit events. So those will be recorded if there's any questions in terms of changes and who did the last change. So with that, I want to thank everyone's attendance today. We are going to have additional videos on this and go deeper into these topics. Obviously, this is just the start, but you'll see a lot more details coming in future videos where we'll show you advanced customization capabilities. So thank you, everyone.